Today we're going to be taking a look at the HD 7950. In its prime, it was one of the fastest graphics cards in the world and came with enthusiast level pricing and performance. And yes, it is a decade old, but it goes for around $60 now and can run just about any game. So stick around to find out why it's still good and if you should buy one. Now I know graphics card prices are dropping and you can easily find 1070s for $100, but this card still offers tons of performance for the price, and in this economy, it might be the only option for some. This is the HD 7950. I got it in a $30 graphics card slot with a total of 10 cards, meaning I only paid $3 for it. That is an insane deal. However, it comes with a few problems. First of all, it's disgusting. That chunk of whatever just fell out of the graphics card. This thing is a biohazard and it needs to be cleaned. Secondly, one of the fans barely spins, so this card loves to overheat. Thirdly, it hates my capture card, but we'll get into that later. For now, I'm gonna take it apart, clean it out, and run some games on it. And let me tell you, this was by far the nastiest card I've ever dealt with. Remember everybody, always use protection. But why is this card still good? Well, to sum it up, it's got a capable processor and it's paired with 3 gigs of VRAM. It has 1,792 shading units, 112 texture mapping units, 32 render output units, 28 compute units, and a core clock of 800 megahertz. There's the bracket off. The 3 gigs of memory is actually GDDR5 and runs at 1250 megahertz with a 384-bit bus. And the grand reveal? You know what? It's not as dirty as I thought, actually. However, we have the Flex OC edition by Sapphire. This means that the core came stock at 860 megahertz and boosts to 925. Ours also has 1 HDMI, 2 mini display ports, and 2 DVI ports, which can vary from card to card. What? There's like brown, just gunk everywhere. This is the IHS, and there's just all this disgusting black buildup. When it came out, it was top of the line, and it's aged pretty well. And even though it's no longer supported by AMD, the card does support basic DirectX 12, so you can run most games out there. And there's the... Oh my, what the fuck? Did something die in here? Was this guy like a chain smoker and he had 30 dogs? I've never seen something so I need to go hose this down outside. The 7000 series, codenamed Southern Islands, utilized TSMC's 28nm process. It competed with NVIDIA's GeForce 600 series, with cards trading blows at every price point. Our 7950 debuted with a price tag of $450, but as I previously mentioned, now goes for about $60 on eBay. After cleaning it all out, I threw on some new thermal paste, screwed it all back together, and threw it into the test bench. I was supposed to put the shroud on before I put the heatsink on. Now it doesn't go all the way. You know what? It's fine. Okay, and now the card's all back together. And here's the test bench computer we're gonna use. It has an i3-4130, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and Windows 7 running on an unbranded SSD. Installation is pretty easy. You just kind of plug it into the PCI lane and make sure it's in there. Then you plug in the first PSU cable, the second PSU cable, and there we go. Let's see what this old card can do. After plugging it in and installing the driver, I decided to overclock the card. This proved problematic, and even though these cards were good at overclocking, mine had some issues. This is the problem that I encountered. To start, here's the test bench on top of a folding chair, but essentially I use a DVI splitter. One of the DVIs goes to the monitor, and the other one goes to the capture card that's plugged into my laptop. However, when I have the capture card plugged in right now, and I try to make something full screen, it goes into 640 by 480 and I can't undo it unless I restart the entire system. Point is, this graphics card has been very problematic. I doubt you'll run into such an issue if you don't get it from Goodwill and you get one that's not falling apart, but regardless, let's get into the testing. One more thing I wanted to mention, but in some of these tests, the i3 was actually the bottleneck. But if you subscribe, I can eventually afford a better processor, so consider doing that. On the bright side, after I was able to get some games running, they ran very well. In CSGO in 1080p with the low settings, I never saw the frame rate dip below 110. I couldn't get the monitoring software to work, but I guess the average frame rate was between 130 and 150. This is the definition of a competitive experience, and the game never slowed down or showed any signs that it was running on a decade-old card. This level of performance remained for the rest of testing, so I threw some harder games at it. Next up was GTA 5. Because the 7950 didn't get along with my capture card, I had to run it in windowed mode in a resolution of 1914 by 1052. I threw on the normal settings, got into a police chase, and didn't encounter a single issue. I got a perfect frame rate with an average of 60 FPS, and it seemed that the i3 was the one holding back performance. But even so, the game ran great, and I have no complaints. Afterwards was BeamNG Drive, which actually really stressed this card. I threw it in 1080p with the low settings, and after a few minutes got an average frame rate of 75 FPS. However, these settings on the game don't look very good, and if you were to actually play it on this card, I'd really recommend upping the settings a bit. Either way, the game ran well. Following that was Valorant. In 1080p windowed mode with the medium settings, it got an average frame rate of 77 FPS. Like BeamNG, you could, and I would recommend turning up settings a bit. Unfortunately, my in-game performance was a bit lackluster, and in fact, after a few minutes, the game got stuck in 480p. But that's my card's fault, and if you have one of these and you're trying to run the game, you shouldn't run into this issue. One of the last games I decided to run was Far Cry 4. It's actually not as easy to run as you'd expect, but in 1080p with the medium settings, it got a good frame rate. I'd estimate the average at about 50 FPS, and throughout fighting it never really slowed down. I did notice that the game began dropping a few frames after a fire broke out and the forest decided to burn down, but overall it was a good experience. The last game I tested was Insurgency. Feeling brave, I used the high and medium settings in 1080p and was not disappointed. It got an average frame rate of 74 FPS and was completely playable. I mean, it's not that hard of a game to run, but it doesn't look bad, and on high settings, the 7950 made light work of this title. Either way, that just about wraps up the benchmarks. So yeah, the performance speaks for itself. It made light work of every title I threw at it, and proved itself to still be very capable. However, for like $30 to $40 more, you can get a 1060 or a 1070, which are much better cards. So in my opinion, the 7950 doesn't really have a use anymore, and it doesn't make sense to buy one unless you get a really good deal. I mean, it offers good performance, but it's not the best price to performance. Even with overclocking, the aforementioned 10 series cards would still be a better purchase. So I can't really recommend buying the card, unless you find it for under $50 and can't be bothered to save another $50 for a 1060. Honestly though, I did not expect this card to perform as well as it did. It's 10 years old, and my card specifically was on its deathbed. But it's resilient, and although it's aged, I wouldn't say it's obsolete. Yet. Oh, and I didn't test this game, but apparently you can run Cyberpunk 2077 on this card. I wasn't able to, due to it not being supported on Windows 7, but I just thought that was remarkable. It's an old card, reasonably running one of the newest and most demanding AAA titles. Just something interesting. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider leaving a like or subscribing because it genuinely helps me out. If you want to join the community, there's a link to the official Jane Knight Discord server in the description, along with a few donation methods that directly support the channel. If you have any questions or related comments, then leave them below and I'll be sure to respond to it. That's about it. Have a great day. Bye.